Thanks Emurgo Academy for this opportunity to present the project. Today we want to talk about Kelley, which is Kubernetes operator for Cardano. I'm Santiago from TXPipe, and I hope that you don't fall asleep throughout the presentation because it's a little bit technical. If you are all awake by the end, I will consider this a win. So let's start. Okay, a little bit about the challenge. So we are in developer ecosystem, and when I think about Cardano developers, I always picture the movie 300. It's a group of experts, very specialized, cutting edge, and just a handful. I think that we might be around 300, not much more than that active developers, but I really don't know. The thing is, if we want to drive adoption to Cardano, we need more projects, more applications, and for that, we need more developers. And that's our main subject in TXPipe, trying to help out with the developer experience by providing open source tools. And one of the areas within the developer experience is how we handle infrastructure, right? A developer that starts its journey to develop on Cardano needs to set up an environment, and that means installing relay node, producer nodes, having to know how to manage private keys, setting up load balancing, installing DB-Sync, installing Ogmios, configuring metrics, alerts, version upgrades. It's a lot. It's all things that we need, but it's a high entry barrier if you want to just start building your stuff on top of Cardano. So we believe that there is no magic bullet, that there will be no solution that solves everything in one click, but there's some stuff that can be automated. And we believe that installs should be pretty easy, that upgrades should be seamless. You shouldn't be worrying about upgrades, that there are a lot of best practices already developed by the community, and those should be somehow built into the installation procedures. And also backups should be out of the box, and monitoring should be out of the box. There is a lot that we can do to improve the developer experience while setting up infrastructure. And that is why we want to develop Kelley. Kelley, it's a set of Kubernetes operators for Cardano. And just a brief introduction to Kubernetes, it is an orchestration platform. The idea is that instead of having to handle specific servers, you just bundle them into what they call a cluster, and from there you have a unified perspective of all the resources that sum up from those servers. So you have a unified perspective of the memory, CPU, disk that the whole set of servers has. So if you want to deploy something, you just tell the cluster, you tell Kubernetes, hey, I need this workload to be running with so many replicas and with this memory and CPU and with this disk, and Kubernetes will find within those servers the one that fits your workload, and it will just accommodate that and try to keep it running. Now, that's Kubernetes. What we want to do is create an operator. An operator will be a piece of software that runs inside the cluster and knows how to create and manage Cardano components. So by just creating a small manifest in YAML syntax, you can describe the desired state of what you want. For example, here in this example, we are saying that we need a producer node as a resource, a relay node as a different resource, and for the producer node, we need one standby replica, and private keys will be handled in a specific vault. And for relay nodes, we need 2 replicas, and the topology should be updated automatically, and Ogmios should be enabled in those nodes. This is just an example, but this is the level of detail that a developer will need, which is not much. You need to understand things, but it's hiding a lot of the complexity of setting up the rest of the components, because by telling the cluster that this is what we want, the operator will be in charge of creating each of the specific components, the deployment of the nodes, setting up Postgres, connecting DB-Sync to the Postgres, and connecting DB-Sync to the Unix socket in the relay node, connecting the relay node to the producer node, setting up the network policies and the firewall rules, and storing the private keys. All of that complexity will be handled by the operator. That's the idea. And that's what we want to develop under the name Kelley in our proposal. A little bit about us. We are TXPipe. We are a company that develops open source tools for Cardano. You might know us from some of the projects that are out there already, like Aura and Palace. And we've been in the ecosystem for roughly a year. And we are really surprised and proud of the community feedback from what we have built so far. We're mostly proud of the contributors that are joining us in the code base and putting hours and effort into the project. That's the thing that makes us most proud of all the stuff that we've been building. So this is us. The development team for this particular proposal, the idea is that Alejandro Dravenche is a site reliability engineer, will be in charge of defining the infrastructure, saying, hey, this is the shape of the components as they should look like in the cluster. Then Mauro Escudero, a software engineer, will be developing the logic of the operator in Python that will automate the creation of the infrastructure defined. And myself, Santiago Carmuega, a software engineer, that I will be participating mainly in planning, architecture, and the project management of the proposal. The roadmap, it's 4 months long. The idea is that the first 2 months will be used to have an MVP version of the operators, where installs and version upgrades and monitoring will be already baked into the release. And then on month 3, we will focus on backup and restore procedures, and also in key management procedures. And the last month will be mainly for security hardening, documentation, bug fixes. And the idea is that each milestone will be including a releasable package that can be tested out, downloaded from the GitHub repository, and tried out by the community. The idea is to gather feedback. We really love the open source approach to building stuff, and we want to promote and push forward with that. This is the budget breakdown. The total amount is $64,000 and it's roughly distributed in these percentages. Almost half, a little bit above the half goes to the development in Python. A big chunk goes to the definition of the infrastructure by the site reliability engineer, and then the technical writer for all the documentation that goes around the project. And that's it. Thank you very much for the time. Any questions? Should I wait?
Thank you very much, Santiago. I just first want to say thank you to TXPipe. You guys are picking up the heavy lifting that is definitely needed in the Cardano development ecosystem. There's been a lot of sort of holes and you're filling those holes, which is fantastic. And you've done a lot of it sort of just on your own as an organization, which is really, really awesome. I know you're one of the GitHubs that I follow. I noticed you got someone else in the chat who also follows your Git because of all the stuff that you're bringing to the ecosystem. And these are really, really necessary developer tools to make it kind of more seamless for developers. So I just want to say thank you for being in Cardano. Thank you for developing on Cardano. And thank you for sharing this proposal with us.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate those words. Very kind.
I'm not a technical guy, but maybe one of our technical folks might have a question for you out there. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I have one. So how much are you planning to extend this? I know there is a lot of people that like Windows for some reason, and obviously there is the iOS people. So are you planning to go into those places too?
Well, with this proposal, the idea is to target initially Kubernetes as an orchestration tool. We understand that roughly 70% of the setups out there are somehow using Kubernetes, maybe not in full extent. So that's our main focus, and the extent of the proposal is to stay within the Kubernetes ecosystem. There are other orchestration tools, and hopefully, once we successfully deliver this first set of operators, we can expand to other ecosystems.
So, hi, Abhi here. A question from my side. So, would it, in theory, then be possible to, execute arbitrary Kubernetes jobs on chain and then record the output and the cost associated with it?
Well, that's a very interesting question. The idea for this set of Kubernetes operators is to orchestrate the components that are already out there, meaning the node, Orchimios, DBSync, Submit API, and such. Now, other tools that we are working on, specifically Aura, and one that it's called Boros, which is going to be released soon. The idea is that they can provide an event-driven approach for building off-chain components. And yes, we are trying to make that happen as jobs and pods that run as part of the Kubernetes infrastructure. So, for example, Aura, you might know about it. You can react to events that happen on chain. The idea is that with this event-driven framework, you can set up a Kubernetes pod that will run every time, for example, a new payment is made to a particular address. And in that way, you can use Kubernetes for off-chain components.
That's super cool. And I think there's a lot of scope in Kubernetes and the orchestration that it does. I've joined your Discord and I hope to chat with you offline as well. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
So I have a non-technical question. Is this your first time doing a Catalyst proposal, or have you proposed in the past?
No, this is our first time.
Fantastic. So all that other work you did by yourselves.
Yeah, that's open source and wanted to be part of the great Cardano community.
That's fantastic. I really appreciate it. I love the open source part as well. I'm a real believer in open source, especially with blockchain software. That way it can be audited by the community. Everybody can use it. So I applaud you also for deciding to go open source. That's excellent. What is your background? Did you work in another blockchain previous to Cardano, or is this your first blockchain experience?
This is our first blockchain experience. We know about cloud architecture. We know about data pipelines. Federico, which I believe he's also in the call, he's my partner, and we've been carrying on a software factory shop here in Argentina, Buenos Aires, where we are located. And from there, we gather a lot of expertise in those areas that I mentioned. And we wanted to get into blockchain. We did an analysis of the different ecosystems out there, and the technology in Cardano proved to be a very good fit for what we wanted to build.
Awesome. So you like functional programming?
Yeah, yeah, I do.
Fantastic. Great. I think the proposal was great. All the information for me was presented for me to make the vote that I need to make.